Hi, I'm Brad Thomas with NBC Sports EDGE, joined by Vaughn Dalzell and Eric Froton, and this week is the College Football Live Q&A. I invite everyone watching on however you're watching to ask your questions. We're going to try our best to answer as many as possible and go over our best bets in the biggest games of the week. Let's get right into it this week because we have a lot to talk about and a lot of games that I'm really excited for. Let's start with the first one. Just so you guys know, we are a few days away from the first college football playoff ranking, and this match has massive implications. Kentucky at Tennessee. Tennessee is 11-point favorite. I'll start this one off, guys. I am on Kentucky. I gave this out midweek at 12.5. I still like 11. I think this game ends around a touchdown score for Tennessee. For me, there's a lot to like about this Kentucky team from a defensive standpoint. They're going to have to slow down probably one of the best offensive attacks in the college football rankings. And I think they could do that. They're going to be able to get a little bit of pressure, which is going to disrupt some of what Hendon Hooker is doing. Hendon Hooker is doing something that's so phenomenal. I have to give him a shout out. The only quarterback through 7 weeks of the season with over 2,000 passing yards, 18 touchdowns, and a completion percentage of 70% or more. C-Rod's going to be able to run the rock a little bit. I think this game is a possible look-ahead spot for Tennessee. I do think they are the better team, so I don't want to sprinkle the money line, but the back door is always open anytime you have a massive game coming up the following week, top 5 matchup between Georgia. Eric, do you have any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I have a particular prop that I like here. The reason why Tennessee, as we know, has been arguably the most, if it weren't for Ohio State, I'd say probably the most prolific offense in the country. But this week they're playing Kentucky, all right? And we know what Kentucky wants to do. They play the slowest pace in all of the country, 131st. They're taking one snap every 32 seconds. That's just stalling at its finest right there.
Yes.
And defensively, Kentucky has come a long way. Sure, they lost 3 games in a row, but last week they beat Mississippi State, obviously a passing team that wants to throw the ball as much as they possibly can. They're ranked 14th overall defensively, so where you're talking about that, Brad, and your methodology, I think that's pretty sound. I think it's going to be a slow game script.
Yeah.
And with Cedric Tillman back for Tennessee, also we've seen the emergence of Jalen Hyatt times 10. I mean, he had 6 touchdowns in the game. I lost track. There's so many of them. But you have Cedric Tillman back, who is an undoubted, absolutely high-end wide receiver who's probably a day 2 pick at the draft in April. He's back on the outside. He will be that primary outside weapon, which is going to push Brew McCoy into the tertiary option role. He's currently at 47.5 receiving yards. I like that under because of the facts that we discussed. Slow game script, tertiary option in the passing game, and the likelihood if Tennessee gets up, they're not going to want to be throwing as much. They're going to want to try to salt this game away because I don't see Kentucky really being able to march on Tennessee willingly at will is kind of what I'm going with. Yes. So I like the McCoy under 47.5.
Vaughn, what do you got on this game? Anything?
Yeah, I actually went with a player prop too, and I had to text you guys make sure it was good. And when Eric told me that some of his boys were on this and they were big hitters, I got excited because – when you see some lines, you may think they're a little bit too easy, but this Rich Rodriguez line, I mean, this guy's been tearing it up. You guys talked about
Chris Rodriguez.
Chris Rodriguez has been tearing it up. But 72 yards, 126, 197 in his 3 games back, 19, 22, and 31 carries. I mean, I expect him to get that bulk of the load again against Tennessee. While Will Levis is, some are throwing him the top 10, top 15 drafted next year on the draft board. I'm not willing to go there, but Chris Rodriguez, I think, is a guy that – with 109 yards last year on 22 attempts against Tennessee. They have a week off to prep for this game. You kind of alluded to, Brad, that this is the Super Bowl for Kentucky most times. He's just done really well. 8 of his last 9 games, 100-plus rushing yards. So really sign me up in a game that screams over to me.
Yeah, no, and it's going to be a fun game to watch for Tennessee. They're going to be in their blackout uniforms, the black and orange, looking really sweet. Guys, if you guys are watching, be sure to smash the like button. Let's get into our best bets. Vaughn, I told you, you told me, we told each other that you were winning 4 straight. So since you're on this massive heater, Eric, yes, we know you're on a heater too. But since you're on a massive heater, go ahead and give me your best bet of the week.
All right, we are going with the Miners down in Texas of El Paso. Super excited about this game, to be honest with you guys. The fact that this opened up at a pick'em, I got this at -110. I also bet at -125. So this will be our 2-unit special for the best bet. Now, Middle Tennessee State is a first-year FBS program. So this is the first time these teams are meeting. Tennessee State has lost 3 straight games, 0-3 ATS in that stretch. So when you look at UTEP since 2020, they're 10-2 on the money line at home, 7-5 ATS as a home favorite. Well, they're 6-0 on the money line. Something I like a lot. And when you look at these 2 teams streaking the past 3 for UTEP and not streaking as much for Middle Tennessee State, you can see UTEP recorded 412, 501, and 425 total yards with 24, 31, and 41 points. That looks great up against the Middle Tennessee defense that allowed 35, 41, and 45 points with 443, 581, and 590 total yards the past 3 weeks. The Miners, they're at home. Take them. Best bet. Let's go 5 weeks in a row, ladies and gentlemen.
5. And listen, this is going to be the greatest comeback story in all of college football when you go 5 straight. You said you're going to do it. Eric, you have a play that I absolutely love from the Ohio State at Penn State game. Go ahead, Eric.
Yes, well, it's tough to compete with Vaughn and his 4-in-a-row streak. Absolutely. Everybody's happy to see that. Everybody wins when Vaughn's 4-0 coming into this week. But as you mentioned, hey, I've been saving my best bets for this show of the week. I'm 7-1 in my best bets. So it is quite a lofty standard to live up to. But like you said, Brad, both of us are on this play, and I feel pretty good. Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver, Ohio State. It won't be the first time you've heard his name from me. Anybody who knows me knows that I drafted the heck out of him in CFF all offseason. I was telling everybody he is the real deal, and he is. He has gone over this. Currently, I believe it's at 78.5. Is that what it's at?
Yes.
Currently.
Yeah,
I was amazed.
FanDuel moved it up to 82.5. But
Shameful. Gosh, this is amazing. This line has been crazy. Okay, let me just go through the origins of this line. Started out, him and Marvin Harrison were right at 78.5 to open the slate. I believe it was on DraftKings. We're going domestics. During the week, we saw, in the early going, Marvin Harrison moved up to 87.5, I believe is where he capped out at. And we saw Egbuka actually get all the way down to 71.5, which is what I have it on the sheet. So by the time it opened yesterday morning, which was Friday morning, we woke up, Egbuka was still at 71.5. Here we are at showtime. Took him, went with it. I'm like, I'm saving Egbuka. He keeps going down. I'm going to save this for the show because I'll get him at 71.5. It's going to be great. Well, I played it, but I didn't put it out until now. So as Hindu Kush, again, the great Hindu Kush, says Egbuka is over 76.5. So look, lay off that 82. Go and get that 76 because that's going to be an important mark. He had 80 yards last week against Iowa, but he hit every other week except for one where he had 70 against Rutgers because they just put him away. They didn't need him against Rutgers. So I'm all about 76.5, the over all day. I think 82. It probably should be right there with Harrison, 80, 85 to 90, because we're not getting JSN playing either. And if it is, it's going to be a decoy role. He's going to be playing full complement of snaps. Egbuka is the real deal. I know you believe it, Brad.
I believe it, and I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys the play that I'm on. I gave this out midweek on my Twitter page, so if you guys are following us on Twitter, you guys already saw it. Egbuka over 100 yards plus 188. That was available on FanDuel. Obviously not available now, but I just want to talk about why I'm on the same side as Eric, and I love Egbuka this week. Number one, he said JSN is going to either play limited snaps or not play at all. Right now, we're at a pivotal point in JSN's career because he has to determine, will he continue to fight it out throughout the season or will he save himself and start prepping for the draft? He has nothing left to prove as a college football player. It's up to him if he wants to compete with his guys till the end and possibly risk making a stock drop due to injury. Also, this is very important. Franklin is a great coach. And Franklin is a great coach at scheming against taking away an option. He is going to try his best, I don't know if he'll be successful, to take away Marvin Harrison in the passing game. The best news for this Ohio State attack is they have a multi-headed monster, and one of those heads is Egbuka. He's a guy who can play every down. He's a guy who has a super extensive route tree. And the best thing I like about taking guys at these very high numbers in alt lines that are wide receivers is they have the ability to make these breakaway plays. So it's pretty I don't know, square of me to take the 100, but look at his track record. I think I'm gonna say this later in the show that I think Penn State get absolutely boat raced, and that wasn't my best bet, but I'm gonna go to my best bet, staying in the Big Ten. Back to my guy Blake Corum. I tried to have this market available before the show on one of our partner sports books, and it didn't come available yet. It was going to be Blake Corum to win the Heisman and Michigan to win the Big Ten parlay. If it comes available midweek, I'm still going to put it out on the NBC Sports page. So just be on the lookout for that. But my play is Blake Corum over 116 rushing yards against Michigan State. So let's talk about this Michigan State team. We already know their secondary, abysmal. Over the past 3 weeks, Michigan State has allowed over 180 rushing yards per game, giving up over 120 rushing yards to Maryland, to Ohio State, to all of these teams. And now you have Michigan, who, and the reason I said Ohio State and the reason I said Maryland is because those aren't run-first teams. Now they're playing against a run-first team against a Blake Corum who is absolutely in control of his game. He's seeing the hole correctly. He's making the cuts perfectly. He's hit this in his last 4 games. So that's Blake Corum, over 116 rushing yards.
Love it. Yeah, I don't think any of us are going to argue with that one. He's been consistent moneymaker. Kind of surprised you didn't say Chase Brown this week against Nebraska. But there's still time. We have about 45 minutes left, so he may sneak in there.
I know. I think that when I looked at Chase Brown's line, I was like, I can't even play this as an alt line. I think it was like 125 when I looked, and I was like, I'm not playing Chase Brown because I'm afraid of that Nebraska game where they just get absolutely destroyed. And Chase Brown ends at like 114, 115, and he doesn't play the rest of the game.
I thought for a second you said Illinois was going to get destroyed. I was about to say, don't dare say that about my Fred Bilma squad on live. No way.
Nebraska has a chance to get destroyed. Let's move over to the People's Parlay. I feel like we're going to have a win on this one because I was looking at everyone's picks, and they're pretty good. Vaughn already gave his out. UTEP, money line versus Middle Tennessee. Eric, I was looking at your play. Tell me about why you like Wake Forest at Louisville this weekend.
Well, I mean, other than the fact that we've seen Wake Forest offense and, last year into this year has seen no drop off in the famed Dave Clawson slow mesh system. They've been excellent. Sam Hartman comes back from that unfortunate, non-disclosed injury, and he's just been dealing. Was phenomenal again last week. They have Donovan Green. They have Keyshawn Williams, who stepped up, and obviously A.T. Perry. I just think this team is rocking. And when you're talking about Louisville, I mean, let's not forget about who this Louisville team is. Malik Cunningham had a lot of hype coming into this season. There was a lot of potential. He's at Louisville. There's the Lamar Jackson, successor sort of comparisons in there. And we have seen his ability to run has been fine, but I don't believe in his accuracy. He has been very, very questionable in terms of his ability to handle pressure, in terms of just overall passing acumen, accuracy, ball placement, all of it. He's just not comfortable in the pocket. You need to move it for him. And when you're dealing with Louisville that is 76th against the pass, against Wake Forest's unbelievable offense, I just don't think they can score to keep up with this Wake Forest team, even though they're on the road. But I just don't have a lot of faith in Louisville. I mean, they haven't really done much to show us that they have faith. Sure, they went and they beat a Pitt team last week that refuses to throw the ball pretty much, and we'll get to that later. But I just simply don't see them being able to keep up with the horses that Wake Forest has in the barn.
When I saw you on this game, I was kind of surprised. I thought the line would be closer to 5.5, and when I saw it, I was like, "Whoa!" And I don't think it's a trappy line. I bet at Wake Forest when I saw you on that same side. So good play there. I'm moving over to probably the scariest cover of the People's Parlay. Florida plus 23 versus Georgia in the world's largest cocktail party neutral site game in Jacksonville. Probably could be one of our last times of having this at a neutral site. They're having conversations of bringing this back to campus. As a guy who lives in Central Florida, I think having it in Jacksonville is phenomenal because everyone makes the trip up there. Is a massive party, even if you don't go to the game. But who cares about the party? Let's talk about the game. Florida has this is the largest spread in rivalry history. The largest margin of defeat was actually 72 points by Georgia, just an FYI. Georgia covered the 14.5 last year. But let's talk about that Georgia team versus this Georgia team. Defensively, that Georgia team was constantly getting pressure on the quarterback. That linebacker core was way better. This year, Georgia's struggling, and I use that loosely, struggling to get pressure on the quarterback. Florida is the least sacked team in the SEC. A lot of it has to do with the wheels and the vision of Anthony Richardson. What version of the Anthony Richardson do we get? Do we get the one that carves up with his legs, with his arm that against Utah, or do we get the one that's throwing multiple picks in a game? I think we get the first one because it's a rivalry game. You give me 23 points against a mobile quarterback, a guy who has still a lot to prove. To be the best, you have to test yourself against the best. I said this was probably a 21-point spread. I'd probably still take Florida. So I like the Gators here. And most importantly, Carter's probably going to be out for Georgia. That takes away a lot of that edge pressure. He's one of the best linebackers on that team in the country in the SEC. So give me the Gators plus 23. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later too. The odds on this parlay, do you guys have the odds on hand?
573.
573. I do love this one a lot. And, I've been the cause of losing the People's Parlay a couple of times these last couple of weeks. So let's get this yourself home. Let's get this home. Let's get this home.
Eric, how do you feel about this one, Eric? Because, it's scary, but someone said this to me yesterday. Would you rather bet Georgia minus 23 against Florida or Florida State minus 24 against Georgia Tech? And when they put it like that, I think I'd much rather have Florida State, and I felt more comfortable with Florida covering that spread. But that's just a random scenario someone gave me. How do you feel, Eric?
Well, it's tough. We've seen Georgia not exactly play up to their reputation. So if we're expecting Georgia of 2021, I don't think that's fair because they had 8, draft picks off that defense, and there's no more Jermaine Burton or George Pickens, even though Pickens wasn't really that much of a factor. Regardless, we got Billy Napier in town too for Florida, and Georgia just hasn't played up in these big games. Look at how they played against Mizzou. Yeah. Look how they played against Kent State. Yeah. I know I'm supposed to just pretend that these things didn't happen, but I'm sorry. I have to. My memory is just too sharp for me to forget how those games went down. So, with such a large point spread in a rivalry game and, them coming off of Vandy, obviously Georgia was, they beat up on Vandy, coming off the bye. It all looks good, but I'm going to go with you, Brad. I lean with Florida since we just haven't seen Georgia be able to completely put teams away. I think this Florida team is on par with Mizzou, stuck around. So
Georgia's also
let's take the points.
Georgia's also coming off a bye week, and then after Florida, they have Tennessee. Yeah. So it's like, while they're preparing for Florida in the back of their minds, they're like top 3 matchup versus Tennessee determines our season. Yeah. So definitely look ahead here.
Yeah, and that's the last big game too, the Tennessee one, because they got Mississippi State, Kentucky, Georgia Tech, which not the same level. No offense.
Sweep.
I kind of like what Shane said, and I'm gonna build off this on a little bit. Missouri's game plan was great, and I think Florida can emulate that as well. They can also emulate the game plan of Kent State with a lot of those 3 to 5 yard passes. If you look at the games where Georgia really covered, it's because those quarterbacks that they played against took a lot of shots downfield, disrupting the timing, turning the ball over, a la Bo Nix, a la Vandy. But Vandy's not a fair one because Vandy stinks. But it just happens when you are in negative game scripts early. Teams like Georgia cover a lot more than not because it's hard to bounce back because their secondary is good.
Don't get me wrong. I'm concerned about Anthony Richardson, who's showing up, and if that secondary is just going to smother those passing lanes. It's an issue, but hopefully we see good Anthony Richardson today. That's what we got. That's what we got
the one that was the Heisman candidate after Utah.
Yeah, right.
All right, guys, we'll take a quick moment here. I invite you to play Notre Dame Pick'em, Irish Pick'em. Play college football Pick'em on the NBC Sports Predictor app for a chance to win $10,000 every single week. It's free. It's easy to use. It's from first downs to touchdowns. You can win big. So feel free to enter with plenty of cash prizes. Go download the NBC Sports Predictor app for your chance to win. Now let's get into the second big game of the week. A shame that this is not a whiteout. Ohio State at Penn State. Ohio State is a 14.5-point favorite. I think the total is at 61. And I'm going to keep saying this, but it should have been a whiteout. Like, Penn State, what are you doing? Eric, go ahead and tell me what you love or hate about Sean Clifford this weekend.
Well, there isn't a lot to love. Let's be honest. We're talking about Sean Clifford. There's things to like. You know, he's a fourth-year starter, game manager type. But, you know, with the mark that we currently have at 230.5, it's important to remember that Sean Clifford hasn't been able to hit 230.5 against some lower-level competition than Ohio State's Jim Knowles coach defense. That is currently the second best defense in the country, according to the numbers. So,
yes.
Sure, last week he hit 295 against Minnesota, who, as we all know, Tanner Morgan didn't play, their 3-4-year starter. And they were playing a completely inexperienced backup who was helpless. They just couldn't do anything. That was a Minnesota team that was, you know, deflated by the fact that they simply couldn't mount an offense. So if you take that out of the equation, okay, Michigan completed 7 passes against Michigan. They threw 19 times against the Wolverines. That's it. He completed 7 passes. Game before that against Northwestern. Okay, you say fine. That's Michigan. Game before that, Northwestern completed 10 of 20 passes. Throwing 20 and 19 passes back-to-back the 2 games before Minnesota. Dreadful. This is against Northwestern, okay? Give me a break. Central Michigan, the game before that, he threw 34 times, but for 217 yards. Game before that, Auburn, 19 times, again, 178 yards. So if we're looking at just the way these games go, they don't trust Sean Clifford to be putting the ball in the air much. And when he does, he hasn't been particularly effective. 8-7 big-time throw to turnover-worthy play rate. If he's going to be throwing turnover-worthy plays out there against this ball-hawking Ohio State defense, bad things are going to happen. Okay, and like you said, you see in the game script, Brad, a fairly comfortable victory for Ohio State. My premise here with this is, okay, you're not going to get any backdoor covers if Ohio State is up, because we're going to see Drew Aller, their 5-star dreamboat, 6'4", 235 freshman who evokes memories of Josh Allen. Okay, so that's what we're going to see here. Get ready, prepare yourself. That's what's happening. Sean Clifford, 230.5 under.
I like that you're on that. I keep going back to the media days when Big Ten Media Day, and Sean Clifford is literally talking about everything other than football. I was like, yeah, I'm not expecting big things out of him. He literally said there's more to life than football. When you're trying to get me excited about your football team, doesn't give me high hopes. I'm on Ohio State. Me and Vaughn talked about this earlier in the week here. This is a pretty crazy stat. The Ohio State starting defense has only allowed 4 touchdowns in their 4 Big Ten games. And I wrote about this in my article when I talked about Ohio State playing Iowa. And I didn't think it was going to be this true. I just kind of had a feeling. When Ohio State plays a like opponent as Michigan State, they want to get double. Ohio State got exactly double the amount that they did against Iowa. I thought it was so ironic. But then I thought it was even funnier that the Ohio State media literally tweeted, if Michigan beats a team by this, we beat them by double. They are going to want to replicate the success that Michigan had against Penn State. And Blake Corum ran all over this Penn State defense. I think Ohio State is a unique situation here because everyone talks about how great their wide receiver core is, how great CJ Stroud is. They also have a double-headed monster at running back in Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams, who can give you miles if you need miles. And then the defense led by Jim Knowles, something that they've lacked for the past few years was physicality. We can go through all the numbers of how they improved, but the most important thing about a defense is winning the battle in the trenches, which is going to limit what Penn State's going to be able to do. I think that this line is too small. This is the first time in a long time where we have an Ohio State team who's covering these big spreads and blowing these teams out. Trust me, I know. I got sucked up into betting Ohio State a lot in the last 2 seasons, but this year they're finally paying me back with cold, hard cash. Vaughn, do you have any leans on this?
I mean, I can't disagree with any of you guys' picks. I like the Clifford fade a lot because, I was looking at his under 12.5 rushing yards. It was juiced to -125, which caught my attention. I really love what I've seen from Ohio State's defensive line lately. I think that defense has come a long way from the start of the season. When you look at Penn State at home against Ohio State the last 5 meetings, I mean, they've been in like that 23 to 26 point range. Their team total today is at 23.5 or 24.5, depending on where you're betting. So that was kind of my target because while everyone always wants to bet an Ohio State team total, Penn State does have a good pass secondary, but I don't think it's good enough to stop C.J. Stroud and company at all. And their rush defense didn't look that great. So by all means, I feel like you have to look at a creative way to play Ohio State if you're not taking the spread, or just fade the Penn State team total, or take Clifford's under passing yards with Eric. I think that was a really great bet too.
You know, so a thought came to my mind when thinking about this game. You know, I've been fortunate enough now to go to a couple of football games, hang out with ADs, talk to them, and kind of get their thought process on the scheduling and mentality. And I really do think that Penn State knows that this is not the team to compete with Ohio State now, which is probably the reason they didn't make this the whiteout game.
I agree.
Like, and that kind of comes to my mind. Yeah. Eric, do you want to answer this one? Thoughts on Singleton rushing yards?
Oh gosh, the Nick Singleton rushing yards prop that I've been dancing with Nick Singleton, it seems like, all season with these sort of things. Last time I took his under. In fact, last week I went 17-1 on my props plays. I went 13-0 on the column. I went 4-1 in the on the show. And my one loss was Nick Singleton's under rushing yards last week. And he got it on a 32-yard rush late in the fourth quarter. This was the last carry by the starters of Penn State. Literally the last snap that they all played together. Singleton took a 32-yard rush to the house, which broke my heart. That being said, I cannot in good conscience take an over on Singleton this week. I think last time I saw her was at 52.5.
56.5.
56.5. Okay, so my apologies.
This is the difference here. I'll let you know right now, so you could tell people what to do in case this is a situation. But 56.5 minus 145 to the under on DraftKings, but on FanDuel it's minus 114, and they're both over unders 114. So it looks like DraftKings taking heavy money to the under. FanDuel's not taking anything yet.
And I would assume so, because as we've kind of talked about game script wise, it's tough to really envision if they get down 14 points, Penn State going over there and ripping off a lot of carries. Plus you got Katron Allen there, of course, too. I don't see the late fourth quarter, 32-yard rush fade, backdoor cover coming in. So I'm staying away from this. I looked at it heavy, but if I had to go, I do lean on it.
Awesome. Cool. Let's wrap that one up with a bow and bring in our guy, Zach Attack, for his segment. He's going to go his top 3 plays. Welcome to the show. How you doing today, Zach?
I'm doing great, guys. Good to hear some of these early show takes while I'm just sitting backstage here and kind of taking in all the knowledge and information you guys are dropping. I'm like, okay, like some of what they're saying is aligning with what I'm about to say. So hopefully we can all look incredibly intelligent together and play this weekend out well and have a little bit of fun along the way. So thanks for supporting me, whether knowingly or not. I feel good about what I'm about to deliver here.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. Listen, Colorado State, terrible offense, but I think they made a change. But you are still fading them. Tell me what you like about this game.
Yeah, Colorado State, terrible offense. Yet to score 20 points in any game this season. Not a ringing endorsement when you're about to go up against a Boise State team at Boise State, who is just riding an absolute heater right now with quarterback Taylon Green now under center. The Boise State Broncos are 5-2 overall in the season, 3-1 against the spread, but they've won 3 straight with Green under center. They're also 3-0 against the spread, which include 2 20-plus point wins over San Diego State and Fresno State. Both of those games were at home. They went on the road last week. They defeated Air Force. In those games with Green as a starter, the Broncos are averaging 31.3 points. Green himself has thrown for 402 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, not great there. Also rushed for 157 yards and another 2 scores. He had a 100-yard game on the ground against San Diego State. Green's a big kid. He's like 6'6". He can run. Like he's an impressive-looking football player on the field. And each of the last 3 games that he has started, we've seen incremental increases in his passing yards total and just I think overall confidence. I think he's looked better. If you look at this game as side by side on paper with some of the advanced stats, Boise State just absolutely houses Colorado State in all of the success rate metrics, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. And I think that this is going to be a tough one to play on the road at Boise State. So the Jay Norvell Colorado State offense is not quite what we saw when he was at Nevada last year. They're not putting up a lot of points. The ADOT for this team, average at the target, is outside the top 140, which is not great when you only consider that there's 131 FBS teams. There's just not a lot going on here. Boise State's looked really great on the defensive side of the ball. I like the boost they've gotten with Taylon Green. It's a 25-point spread. It's a big number, but the fact that they've already hit 20 twice under Green makes me think they can get 25 here against Colorado State and Boise.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make there, Zach, with Colorado State about how this is year one of Jay Norvell, who, if you remember, he was last at Nevada, right down the road over there in the Mountain West Conference. So it was a somewhat of a lateral move, but it took him 5 years to build up Nevada to what it was last season, to have Cole Turner out there, the elite tight end, having Elijah Cooks, having Romeo Doubs, who's out there for Green Bay. He's outperforming Christian Watson, who was their second round pick. Doubs was a fifth rounder. He's outplaying him. So it all came together. And Carson Strong too, a quarterback. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They had a senior dominant team that took a while to get there. That is not the case with Colorado State. Sure, he brought over a couple of skill position guys, and that's fine, but it's more than that. It's a whole culture. You're turning over a bunch of players that you're just meeting for the first time. So he doesn't have his guys in there. He's trying to implement a system. But look, the air raid doesn't work if you don't have the players. And if you can't keep Clay Millen upright, who has been in his first foray in starting, disappointing. And he was injured as well. So it's hard to really back Colorado State right now. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move over. Go ahead, Vaughn. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you.
I was gonna ask Zach. I like that. Like we talked about them a lot here. I was a little scared because it's a big number, but where do you want to go with your next pick? Because I know we talked about multiple games this week. We're on the same side as some games, so hopefully you make me a little happier here.
Yeah. So Vaughn, I know you've got UTEP outright on the money line. I'm going to go ahead and take them at -2.5 against Middle Tennessee State. These are two teams that have recently just kind of been trending in the complete opposite direction. Bad news for Middle Tennessee. They haven't won since their Week 4 upset over Miami. They're 0-3 in their last 3 games. They're also 0-3 against the spread. While on the other side of this, you have UTEP, who's 4-4 on the season, but 3-1 over their last 4 games, and 3-1 against the spread. So these two teams are really just trending in the complete opposite direction. Middle Tennessee is coming off a bye week. I think we can factor that in a little bit. But UTEP overall, there's a couple encouraging things I like about this game. Quarterback Gavin Hardison, he's only completing 52% of his passes. That's not that great. 1,700 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. I like little things like the fact that of his 7 interceptions, 6 of those came on the road, and those were in 2 games against Louisiana Tech and New Mexico. So I'm not quite sure what was happening there, but at least he got him out of the way in bulk on the road. UTEP is home this weekend. I think he's going to be able to settle in a little bit without having to face the home crowd. The Miners have also benefited from a solid run game over the last 4 weeks. Deion Hankins leading the way, 58 carries, 336 yards, no touchdowns, but as a team, they're rushing for over 180 yards on the ground in this 4-game stretch, and they're actually graded as the 6th best run blocking line per Pro Football Focus with a grade of 78.7. So Pro Football Focus high on UTEP's rushing attack. Quarterback Chase Cunningham from Middle Tennessee, he has been under fire all season. He's 10th in the nation in pressures with 102. He's tied for 41st in sacks taken with 15. That's just over 2 a game. And just like I mentioned earlier with Clay Millen in Colorado State, I'm betting against another quarterback whose ADOT is outside the top 140 in the nation. I don't know about you guys, but I don't really like my team's chances at covering if their quarterback simply ranks outside of how many teams are in the FBS competition. It just seems like a really bad bet to make, especially when he's getting blown up in the backfield. So, so we're going against Chase Cunningham in Middle Tennessee. UTEP at home. There's been a lot of money and tickets on this game. Sometimes we're looking to fade the public, but it just seems like this one makes a lot of sense for UTEP coming off of a solid few weeks, and Middle Tennessee's offense just kind of being in disarray. So I really like UTEP here, -2.5. It's a small number to cover. You beat them by a field goal, you got it, and I think they can do that here.
I'll let you guys chime in here because I've already talked enough about UTEP, but I'll say it's not a public play by any means. The sharps are all over UTEP this week because anybody no one that just bets Saturdays are betting Middle Tennessee State and UTEP. They don't know about UTEP at home and how good they are, like this type of stuff. So, all the money you're seeing coming in, it's people like us that could not wait to play UTEP on Saturday night because that's
the sickos. Like the sickos.
Yeah. I'm just trying to lock that in right now. I'm going to jump in with my boys. That is great.
All right. What's next? I know you had a big game on the slate, talking about two kind of smaller mid-major schools, I should say. But break down your big game and one line that's on the move.
Yeah, one line that's a little bit on the move. I continue to bring the weekly Big Ten derivative pick, so it's not quite the whole game spread or the total or anything like that. I just look for a little part of the game. I try to find something that I think looks good, and I roll with it. This week I'm going with Ohio State -9.5 first half spread against Penn State. Again, you guys have already touted this game in a number of ways that I think just kind of boost up my my confidence with this pick. We're going unders with Clifford. We're not excited about the total for Penn State. So I think that as far as this goes with the Ohio State game, I think that this is an interesting first half spread at 9.5. It moved up a little bit from 8.5 yesterday. But Ohio State, perfect 7-0 record, 4-2 against the spread, 3-0-1 against Big Ten competition. I think someone mentioned earlier they've only allowed 4 defensive touchdowns against Big Ten competition this season. I think that's going to certainly help out, at covering games here, which I like them to do against Penn State. CJ Stroud, obviously ridiculous, Heisman candidate right now, 2,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Penn State. You guys mentioned Penn State earlier, and I just kind of want to continue to touch on what you said about Sean Clifford, but then also how they've actually played some of these games out. They had the big win last week against Minnesota. You mentioned no Tanner Morgan there. And then Penn State's just kind of walked through, I think, a couple of wins against teams like Ohio, a bad Auburn team, Central Michigan. They should beat Northwestern. They've outscored these opponents in those 4 games 137-43. Like they've not faced a lot of tough competition really outside of Purdue, which was the opening game of the season. You can say Minnesota all you want, but with no Tanner Morgan, that's kind of, that you're at a disadvantage there, even if your quarterback is Sean Clifford. So I like the Ohio State first half spread here at 9.5. I like the overall total. I think on DraftKings, where I was looking at this line, it was at 15 currently. I like that as well. I think we're all kind of on Ohio State in our own way for this one. So I first half spread -9.5 for Ohio State.
Yeah, Ohio State, they know after that Notre Dame game to start the season that how important it is not to get in the negative game trip and start off early. So I do like your thought process here, even against Iowa, where they made Vaughn sweat that first quarter. It was they still got the job done. Yeah, so I like your plays here, Zach. As always, thank you for joining us. Let's make it a profitable Saturday for us all. Take care.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Zach.
Cool. Let's move over. Arizona State versus Colorado. Arizona State kind of turned their season around, but Eric is eyeing a player prop in the likes of Elijah Badger.
Indeed.
Awesome,
and, who doesn't like Badger? Because if anybody, like most of this audience, I assume, has watched Breaking Bad, everybody's favorite character was Badger, Jesse Pinkman's lovable doofus friend. Okay? I love Badger. You love Badger. Everybody loves Badger. And that is neither here nor there. But when it comes to Elijah Badger, he has been clearly the best player on this Arizona State passing offense. Sure, Xavier Valdez had a nice, run, but they're over there. They're in Colorado. We know about Colorado. There's no secret why Kyle Durrell got fired unceremoniously shortly into this season. It's because this team is drastically underperformed. 129th in terms of explosive plays allowed. That's third worst in the country. You don't want to be, associated with that metric. 51% success rate against. I mean, they're not going to have a problem, Arizona State, going on and handling this, defunct defense that Colorado's out there pitching. So when it comes to that, keep in mind, Arizona State, they just fired their head coach. They want to go out and put up rack up a skull or two as well, because these guys are all looking, especially the assistants, They need jobs next year. So there's plenty of motivation on their part. And this is just a more talented team than Colorado. They're starting the backup quarterback, JT Shrout. Okay, their true freshman starter is hurt, so you don't even have that ability. I just think this is going to be a blowout. This is a terrible Colorado team. Elijah Badger, for his part, has been exceptional. I mean, he's gotten at least 9 targets 5 of the last 6 games, and the only one he didn't. He caught 2 targets against USC in a game that was like just pretty much a total and utter collapse. There was nothing that Arizona State did well. But in the other 5 games, he's hitting this. He's only at 56.5. I think he catches a long one, and he puts this to bed in the first half. Take Elijah Badgers over.
Love it. Love it. Vaughn, we can actually answer this question because you have a play in this game. Chow Chad, sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. Are they crazy for thinking that the air is out of the tires for Syracuse and the Irish will roll? Vaughn, you have a play in this game, so you address this.
Yeah, man. Everybody is super excited for this game. And everybody that's betting Notre Dame has one statistic that's been beat into their head all week. And that's Notre Dame is a remarkable 20 wins and 1 loss in their last 21 against ACC opponents. And because they beat North Carolina and that no-nonsense defense that the Tar Heels have, now they believe that Marcus Freeman will continue to roll on with Notre Dame against ACC opponents. I think not. Q's in the orange. I mean, are you not entertained last week? We talked about it. They should have covered. They should have won.
They should have won. They did cover.
But Will Shipley had the game. We talked about Will Shipley last week and said they got to stop him if they want to cover, and they couldn't do that. But they did cover still, but didn't get the win. They had a lot of big plays on defense. And I look at Notre Dame, man. I'm just not impressed. Like, you look at what they did against UNLV last week, and you may say, oh, look, they put up 44, 45 points. There were so many possessions that they turned the ball over, punted, left without points, or kicked a field goal when they should have had 7. They should have put up legit 63, 70 points on UNLV in the last week, but they didn't. And one last point that people are talking about on Notre Dame is their strength of schedule, saying that they have a top 10 strength of schedule this year. Well, when you go at Ohio State and go to Notre Dame, of course your schedule is going to be a lot tougher than a lot of other teams. But they still, like I said, North Carolina win. I don't hold any stock into that. Schrader's looked great this year. Syracuse can run. They can play defense. Sign me up for the orange on the money line. Sorry, Notre Dame fans, but good luck.
Yeah, man, I don't understand like how Tucker only got 5 carries last game. I think that they make a point to use him a lot. I looked for the line to see if it was something that I wanted to play, and it wasn't. I'm just too afraid of, why didn't he get more? I follow him on Twitter, and he's always breaks down his performance. He said he felt that he played fine, but he could have been more involved. That's basically his way of saying, give me the ball.
That's a polite way of saying I need the ball next game.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go to my next pick. We're going to talk about Oregon at Cal. So to start the season, it was pretty much win out and maybe you have a chance at the playoffs. That's what Oregon's philosophy was. Now the way the playoff picture is starting to shape up where there could be a 1-loss SEC champion, why would Oregon think they are out of the playoff rankings by any means? Oregon so far this season have been ultimately impressive at their ability to manage games, but to manage games in a way where they are outperforming their opponents' expectations. So their success rate in pass success rate, rush success rate is top 20 in the country, top 5 for pass success rate, going against a Cal team who defensively, it's not the Cal team that we were expecting. You can look at all of these stats and graphs, and every metric you want to pull up when you put the two teams side by side favors Oregon. The only place that I think that Cal has the advantage is the defense, but it's not a good defense. It's just they're playing better against lesser opponents. This Oregon team knows if they want a chance at the playoffs, they have to win and win convincingly in every game they've played. So let's talk about Bo Nix. I called them Bo Picks all his tenure at Auburn. I called him Bo Picks against Georgia. And then Bo Nix throughout the season now is making himself known. The world knows who Bo Nix is, not just the guys who live in the South. I think this team is poised for a massive, massive run. What they did to UCLA was nuts. Like, I'm watching this game and they were unstoppable. Cal against Washington, if it weren't for some big drives in the second half, Washington boat races them and cover that 7-point spread. If you were lucky and got 7.5 for Cal, you covered. If you were unlucky, you didn't cover by getting 6.5. I think this is going to be a blowout here. I wrote in my article that this is a game where if you want to play player props and you want to play team totals, you want to do same game parlays, this is the game you do it for Oregon. I think Oregon hits their team total. I think Oregon, Bo Nix hits his rushing props. There's another prop that I had my eye on. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a few props in this game that are really nice and really, really playable. So give me Oregon. Anybody have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. What's interesting about Cal is they, as you mentioned, this is Justin Wilcox, their head coach, and he is a defensive guru. That's why he was brought in. They had Sonny Dykes there with Davis Webb and Chad Hansen humming the ball around before he came around until he went and hit the road, and they bring in Justin Wilcox, and things have changed over at Cal, to say the least. But, this is supposed to be a great defense. This is ranked 80th overall. They have a 46% success rate allowed. That's almost every other play. Teams are having successful plays against them. And that's obviously, a severe problem because Oregon leads the entire country with a 60% success rate offensively. That is astronomical. Like, this is
crazy.
An extremely efficient offense. Cal, and if you look at just their overall performance against FBS and Power 5 teams has been dreadful. I mean, you just look at their game log. Okay, Notre Dame, 1% post-game win expectancy. They beat Arizona, and then their last 3 games, 2% win expectancy against Washington State, 2% win expectancy against Colorado, and then 16% against Washington. This is a team heading in the wrong direction. Yes. I think you see Justin Wilcox probably fired before the end of the season. This game could do it. Like, that's where we're at. They got Oregon and USC, Oregon State coming up. Then Stanford, then UCLA. Like, what a horrible, horrible run. They got worked over in the easy part of their schedule. This is a bad, bad scene for Cal. I don't like him here. Oregon all the way. This is a bad spot.
I just love watching that game, and the announcers are talking about Jack Plummer and how fantastic he is, and I'm just like, dude, you literally can't call someone a fantastic quarterback because they played 2 good drives one time in their entire football career. Like, that doesn't make them a great player.
The announcing teams love cranking up the hyperbole machine on some of these players. It's amazing sometimes, but yeah.
All right, let's move over to the Florida State game. Eric, I love hearing you deliver these props. So tell me what you love, what you hate about Pittman.
Sure. Well, Micah Pittman. It's funny we should be talking about a Oregon because, as we know, Micah Pittman is a former Oregon Duck, and he transferred over there to Florida State. Like, frankly, every receiver they have, it seems. Johnny Wilson came over from Arizona State. So, with Micah Pittman, he was hurt. And came back last week after missing a game and was pretty disappointing, if I may say, in terms of what he did last week. 1 catch, 6 yards. Previous week, 4 catches, 34 yards. The point is, Ontario Wilson is back. He had missed a couple games, is what it was. Johnny Wilson has been electric. Reading the practice reports from this week, he's just been absolutely dominant. He is the clear number 1 receiver where Pittman has been in the slot. Dating back to his time with Oregon, I've never been impressed with Pittman as a player. 4 targets last game against Clemson, just 1 reception, 6 yards, and a drop. And the drops were really an issue for him when he was at Oregon. I just think with, Florida State here, facing off against Georgia Tech, 24-point favorites. A Georgia Tech team that very well may not have James Sims. It probably won't. He left the last 2 games. So even if he's out there, he's not going to be as effective. I just think you're you're going to have a pretty comfortable win out of Florida State, and they're not going to really have to be, keeping the foot to the gas pedal. With Pittman being a slot receiver, he's less likely to catch one of those big, downfield shots. It's going to have to be more a combination of 5-6 catches. I just don't think he sees that volume. I'm going to go under on Micah Pittman's receiving.
All right, then let's move over to Iowa versus Northwestern. Vaughn, we touched on this game, and I actually love your pick. I have a play in this game too, but I want you to give yours.
Well, I got 2 plays, so I don't know which one you love, but I'm sure it's probably going to be the player prop and not the spread. But we're going to go with Evan Hall, under 44.5 rushing yards. I know Eric also had a play on this guy in a different way, but you look at Evan Hall, I mean, he doesn't have much to go off of against stellar defenses. Against Wisconsin, he had 13 rushing yards on 9 carries. Against Penn State, he had 45 yards on 11 carries, but he only went over 44.5 because he had a 29-yard run, meaning he had 16 yards on his other 10 carries in that game. Iowa, as we know, one of the best rushing defenses in the country. They actually held Trayvon Henderson to 38 last week. Chase Brown was one of the guys that did get loose, Blake Corum the other. But we can't blame those guys for beating on Iowa because they also had 29 and 30 carries. In this situation, Evan Hall will not see anywhere near that. And this is a huge, huge bounce back week for the Iowa Hawkeyes, getting destroyed by Ohio State. Now they come home. So now I'm going full sicko mode, full Florida man headline. Florida man bets Iowa spread is what the headline of this would be. And I think the Hawkeyes are about to run all over Northwestern. Northwestern's rushing defense has been terrible this season. They're ranking about 114th in the country. And then you look at what guys have did. Robin Hemby of Maryland, 179 yards. Brandon Allen, 135. Nick Singleton, 87 yards and a touchdown.
Yes.
Penn State won by 10, Wisconsin 35, Maryland by 7 with a backup quarterback. I think Iowa wins by more than 10. The spread's been 11.5. I wouldn't talk you off that, but we know Iowa red zone offense could be an issue once or twice. So I'd like to take a 10 even and just risk 1 unit instead of risking the 1.35 to win 1. So I'm on Iowa minus 10 and Evan Hall under 44.5 rushing yards.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Vaughn, I am on a particular Evan Hall play, and I understand why you went under in the rushing yards. Those are pretty well-articulated points. I am actually on the over for Evan Hall, but not his rushing, on his receiving. Because Evan Hall is one of the best receiving backs in the nation. Even dating back to last year, people didn't kind of realize it, but he was one of the top 10 receiving backs in the country last year. That's only continued this year. In terms of the past 3 games, 9 targets on September 17th, 8 catches. 18 targets against Duke 2 weeks ago. We had 213 receiving yards. And that's a really good comparison because Duke has an excellent run defense behind DC Mike Elko, who was the Texas A&M defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach there. And they've done a great job. Last week I took the under on who was playing them for rushing yards as well. So that's been a nice little profit center, taking those Duke unders. And then last week against Nebraska, 6 targets, 5 catches, 55 yards receiving. The number here for Hull actually it's at 25.5 right now. It went down 1 yard. He has cleared that 6 out of 7 games, and he's cleared it comfortably out of 6 out of 7 games. It isn't just 25.5 he's cleared. He's cleared 30 every single one of those games. So I feel like you're even getting a little bit of buffer on this particular bet, because guess what? They're not going to be running it down Iowa's throat. They're going to have to scheme. They're going to have to suck them in, hit some dump offs, hit a couple of screens to Hull. That's going to be an important part of their offense. Love the over here.
Awesome. Let me go, and I'll be quick on my next pick in this Iowa game. Northwestern team total. I got it at under 12.5. I wanted to tell you it's available at 13. It's the same thing to me. I don't think they score more than 10 points here. Iowa, unfortunately, is a top 10 scoring defense. It's funny to say they're top 10 because they're closer to 9 than they are to 1, but that's because they played Michigan and Ohio State. But if you look at their defensive FEI, they are the second-ranked defense. This is against a Northwestern team who ranks in the bottom 100 in scoring offense and scoring efficiency. So give me Iowa in a massive bounce back spot, and I'll roll right over into my next pick, Oklahoma State at Kansas State. I'm taking Oklahoma State, and this is not a fade of Kansas State by any means. They're having a fantastic season. But when I talked about Oklahoma State in the last couple of weeks on this show, I talked about their biggest strength on defense is getting pressure on the quarterback, but they're also their biggest weakness is when they don't get pressure on the quarterback, they're weaker in the secondary. So when they play against better offensive lines, they kind of struggle. This Kansas State offensive line, it only gets their high acumen because of the mobility of their quarterback, the strength of Deuce Vaughn. But from a sheer statistics standpoint, they're not the best offensive line they've played all season. I think they're going to be able to get to the quarterback, whether Martinez plays, whether Howard plays, or whether they have to go to the third string. I haven't been looking up at the updates, but I'm fine with either of those because if you're those guys in, they're a little banged up. I think to beat Oklahoma State and Spencer Sanders, who has a massive winning record in his career, you have to have a 100% quarterback. Vaughn, let's move over to your next play.
All right, let's go. This is going to be an awesome game. Awesome cap, in my opinion. This was contention for best bet today. I'm not going to lie. Navy, team total over 27.5, opened up at 26.5 against Temple. This is Stan Drayton's first year as a Temple head coach. It's also his first time facing a triple option offense as the head coach of Temple, which makes me so excited, guys. Temple allows 180 rushing yards per game, 103rd in the country, 4.3 yards per carry and 10 tutties. Navy, as we know, runs the ball continually, 250 yards per game, almost 2,000 on the season. This is a spot where Temple didn't have a bye week entering this one, so they didn't have extra time to prepare for the triple option offense, which is going to be very significant here for Navy. And if you just look over the last 3 weeks, Navy scored 53, 34, and 20. And where they're laying 10 or more as a home favorite, Navy has scored at least 31 points in 9 of their last 10 games and 28 or more points in 17 of the last 20 as a home favorite of 10 or more. So give me Navy's team total over 27.5.
Nice.
Awesome. Eric, go ahead and give me some picks.
Thanks, buddy. All right, we got a couple more here. I'm going to go with Xavier Walter White. We got double references of Breaking Bad here today. Wide receiver, Texas Tech, former running back, who was pretty much an all-purpose type guy. They converted him in the offseason, and my gosh, when Miles Price went down, he has been amazing in that slot role there for the Zach Kitley coach, high-flying Texas Tech offense. The past 3 weeks, when Miles Price went down, 9 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown 3 weeks ago. 8 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown against Oklahoma State. And then last week against West Virginia, 8 catches, 139 yards and a touchdown against West Virginia. He has been electric, absolutely dominant, the best player on the field each of the past 3 weeks for Texas Tech. I don't see them phasing him out just because Miles Price is back. And when you consider it, it's only a 37.5 receiving yards that they're at, and they're playing at Baylor, which is known for snuffing out the run, which they don't have a great run game anyways. They're going to have to throw, and they'll be hitting those quick, short slants in the middle of the field. Love Xavier White over 37.5 receiving yards.
Awesome. You have another one for us?
Yes, I do. And then we have, of course, Spencer Rattler. You've heard of him. He's
running back.
This isn't the first time I brought up Spencer Rattler's name here on this program. And I'm guessing it probably won't be the last if they're going to keep putting him over 200 yards passing. Spencer Rattler doesn't throw for over 200 yards against Power 5 teams. Let me explain. Last week, Texas A&M, we watched that game. They didn't win because of Spencer Rattler. He was dreadful. I mean, he was 12 of 25 for 168 yards. Congratulations. The week before, he threw 19 passes against Kentucky, completed 14, 177 yards. Fine. Week before that, against South Carolina State, the one time in the past 6 games that he's cleared the 202 mark was against South Carolina State. He hit 212, and he still threw 2 interceptions. Sorry. It's just not happening. 187 against Charlotte, 118 against Georgia. I cannot, in good conscience, against a Mizzou team who, again, underrated defensively, 9th in the country against the pass. Good luck, Spencer Rattler, covering 203.
I love it. I will answer Hindu's question. I didn't know if Johnson was going to actually play today. I didn't see the final injury report. I know he's been banged up. He was out, but then he's been banged up all week through practice. If he plays, I wouldn't imagine he plays much, but the way that the kind of player he is, I feel like he's the kind of guy who just needs 2 receptions to hit this number. So it does scare me. I would just check the injury report, see if he's going to be limited or not. If he's limited, then, I probably would play the under, but I don't know, Eric. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Of course, it's a prop. Of course, I have thoughts. You know this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I put this out on Thursday in my early lines recommendations. So it's interesting, Mr. Hindu Kush, my friend, check out my columns. I had this at 52.5 2 days ago. It was at 52.5. Yeah, I bet it with you. Yeah. I was like, I need to send my money to you right now, Vaughn. I can't bet it. Please put this in for me. And you did. Props. So this is at 52.5. I think this is ridiculous how high this line at 52.5. Even at 36.5. He was banged up last.
You
know, like he didn't look particularly good. He was out there running routes. He did run 39 routes. So you do have to have some caution. At 36.5, man, that's 16 yards less than what we had it at. I have a hard time playing with 36.5 considering he ran 39 routes last week, even though we only caught 3 passes for 38 yards. But he had done that better before that. I got to stay away at 36.5.
Awesome. Let's see. Vaughn, do you have any more that you want to give us?
Yeah, I'll go through my last two quickly because we know we got kickoff here coming in the likely moments. But UCF, I know Eric wrote about this in one of his columns, Cincinnati and UCF. Cincinnati could be without a couple big playmakers here, but huge bounce back spot for the Knights at home, which is a place they love to play at. The score last week against East Carolina doesn't really tell how that game worked out. Of course, 34-13 looks like a blowout, but it was a quick 17-0 jump out for ECU before UCF climbed back into that game and let up a couple garbage time touchdowns late. But really, this is just a trend spot you have to play. Cincinnati has only played one top 50 rushing offense all season. That was Arkansas in week 1. UCF is number 3 in the country in rushing offense, and they have the best red zone defense in the country. Give me the Knights, and then I'd be reminiscent if we didn't bring up San Diego State. The Aztecs and Jalen Maiden have been unreal. We had to stay up until 3 a.m. to see this cash our best bet last weekend. We'll have to do it again this week for a 1 unit and then a quarter unit on the money line. I got an 8.5. Wouldn't talk you off a 10. This team's undefeated ATS since Jalen Maiden's takeover. The offense looks totally different. This is the defensive back turned quarterback we're talking about. So great defense against Fresno State. I like the rushing ability. Give me the Aztecs plus 10 and on the money line.
Love it. Hey, Sean, I'm going to answer this question for you. Did it pop up? Oh, there we go. Which Charbonnet prop do you like best? I like them both. I don't know if they've moved since I've checked. I didn't play either. 95 was what I saw for rushing. And 22.5 was what I saw for receiving. Right. Yeah. And he's hit like 4 out of 5 in both. So for me, I don't think I like one more than the other. And I think both are playable lines. He's going to get the volume. He's a guy that you have to get involved in your offense. And they've done exactly that. Marty with the house call, TCU's team total over 38.5.
Can't argue with that.
I need West Virginia to win this game. Mountaineers, come on, figure it a way out. But hey, guys, let's wrap this up real quick.
Marty's our guy. Marty. He had some good ones. He's had some good ones on the show. Dave Warner, I think he gave me props, Marty. Any
other plays that we didn't cover? Quick Brian Hamilton before we wrap up. I don't have a play. I do think that Ole Miss beat A&M. The A&M program's in absolute disarray. They're stuck with Jimbo Fisher because of the buyout option. It's way too massive. He needs to turn over the reins in terms of offensive play calling. He's not a good offensive mind because this is not your 2012. You have to be able to adapt or die in college football. So
yeah. And by adapting, we mean don't let your 5-star freshman smoke marijuana in the locker room. Yeah.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's what happened. They were
my God.
Allegedly, I don't know. I wasn't there, unfortunately. So I wish I was, but
that program was so good. Guys, hey, this was fun. Thank you so much to everyone who watched. Be sure if you're watching to drop a like, follow, hit the little bell button so you know when we go live. Take care and best of luck. For Eric and Vaughn, I'm Brad Thomas. See ya.